Wonderful. So, good morning, all, and I will introduce you to this topic. We have about an hour and 7 minutes, 8 minutes to go. So, and there is a lot of ground to cover. So, why look up Mumbai is an important item, and I have been using this caption for a couple of years or more now. While the repertoire of my photographs have increased over time, and they definitely threaten to spill over even one or two lectures. So this is basically about sculptural art and their space in architecture and their contextual setting. When we say contextual setting, it's important to understand the political, social, economic, cultural symbolisms and the background to which they catered to then, and if they still have a relevance now in terms of the symbolic concept, what do they have, etc. So a lot of these items were created between mid 19th century and mid 20th century. So we will start with a very quick look at this chronological reference of Mumbai. For those of you not familiar with Mumbai history or not from Mumbai, I think this will serve as a very quick reference. The reason being, many people do not really relate to things in concept of chronological relativity. You know, what comes before, what comes after. So with that, if I may just point out to the red box down below, this is like 1840s, and I'm coming up to about approximately 1940s. So before that, we have Portuguese, and we have the the age of the great rocket caves, and 300 BC, and after that we have the Ashokanitic and stuff like that. So that piece does not concern us today. Today we are starting off with approximately 1850s and ending in approximately 1940s. So inside this red box, we have a lot of these monuments, which are primarily what we call as Victorian Bombay, and we will obviously spill over to Georgian, Edwardian, etc. Okay, so with that, if we have to look at the development of Bombay, the geographical expansion over the ages, if I look at this area, where I've clicked here blue, this area could well be 1680, 1700, 1750. This is the time when this area really catches importance, political importance. A lot of speakers have spoken on this, so I will not get into that detailing on this forum right now, given the time and the coverage that we want to do. So assuming say this is like 1680 to 1750 and onwards, because this is a live heritage space as well as an administrative space even now. Then comes the Bombay Fort area, which is, the fort gets completed by 1710 approximately plus minus. And this is where it is. This green dot here is Honeyman Circle. These blue dots here are the gates. The one westward, which is towards the left, where my cursor is, Church Gate. The one on the north, Bazaar Gate. The one on the bottom, to the bottom of the screen, is Apollo Gate. So this Bombay Fort area, as we all know, was built with a purpose, but to my mind, the demolition of the fort is more important than the building of the fort as far as Bombay is concerned. The reason being, the breaking of the fort brings to us a complete new city, a new urban geography, a new political philosophy, a new empire, change from East India Company to the Crown, which was announced from our own town hall, and a neo-Gothic ensemble, where you see this orange line here. This is a neo-Gothic ensemble. This is broadly between 1860s, 1870s, right up to 1900. Then subsequent to that, we have the Bombay Port Trust area, Ballad Estate coming up. Bombay Port Trust comes up in 1873. And Ballad Estate starts, taking shape a little after that, around 1900, 1910. 1920, it becomes very important by the time the First World War happens. And Marine Walk itself is a very interesting scheme, and we are grateful to the MHS and to Commodore Johnson that he will be presenting to us immediately after this. So more on the maritime history from him. So I would not dare to step into those big shoes. Then we have the Marine Drive, Back Bay, Art Deco Ensemble, Marine Drive, Marine Lines. This is all approximately 1920 to 1930, 1935, 1940. Regal Cinema, if you see, as 1933. So this is how Bombay expands. So this context is important as to where and how things move. So today's walk, this is how we are going to be covering. Where you see number one, this is Crawford Market. We'll take this route. We come to BMC, CST, and then to Standard Chartered Bank and to Churchgate. And then we will continue. The blue line here is the entire walk today. It's an 8-kilometer walk. Thankfully, it's virtual. And we will start with that. So when we say Queen Victoria, what age and time are we talking about? Just a plain reference zone. Queen of England 1837 to 1901, Queen's Proclamation for India 1858, Empress of India title 1876. This photo is this is my photograph of Queen Victoria statue at Baghdad Museum, the one, the vandalized one, which is repaired and kept here. Then we have King Edward VII, Alagoda, also adjacent to the Baghdad Museum. This is King George V. King Edward and King George V statues were as Prince of Wales, but it's fine to refer to them as kings now. And this is at a CVSVM. One important person we need to know is Bartle Frere, Governor of Bombay, 1862 to 67, who took upon himself the efforts to completely modernize the city by getting rid of the fort, by getting the new infrastructure. Today, when we say new city, we need industry, we need place to have your service sector, and we need to have dockyards, and we need to have mills, and we need to have railways, and banking, insurance, the works end to end. And we need to have grand architecture, place to host the government, and a culture which definitely emphasizes on participative, inclusive contribution to business, and a fair, equitable space to do business, the rule of law, and most importantly, it was always emphasized. I mean, this several scholars have emphasized, including Retarana Day, and the British in Bombay definitely wanted to steer quite away from pushing any religion or supporting any one religion, at least as a matter of policy. So Bartle Frere for you. This crest here is a Herbst Prema Nindi crest. It's important to know because this is what represents the spirit of our city. This is the first city of India. Now, what was happening in the globe at that point in time? Let us go back to London. This is the John Majeski garden at the Victoria and Albert Museum. Now, I'd like to start here because this gives a context to the empire in India as well. Okay, so if you look at this building came up later, around 1870s onward. That time it was a South Kensington Museum. It was not called the V&A. If you look at the central pediment, if you look at Victoria, and clearly they've labeled it so that many 100 years later we shouldn't read it as somebody else. And you see all these countries mentioned here who took part in the Great Exhibition of 1851. The Victorian Empire, the Victorian times were genuinely a time when steam became very important, trading became important, banking, the steel works, and several kinds of international economic networks, the rise of modern capitalism, joint stock companies, name it, and it was happening. Trade, commerce, industry, science were considered to be progress. So the centrality of Queen Victoria, symbolizing British influence in progressing global economic exchange within empire, was critical. She's holding a laurel in her hands. And if you can just read all these names here, there's Australia, Canada, India, Russia, United Kingdom, colonies, etc., etc. I mean, a lot of them actually. I mean, if I have the time, this itself calls for a full lecture. So this is important to set the context here. So the 1851 Great Exhibition and the Industrial Revolution are the context. Now, when we step into the next area, one second, yes, okay. Can you see the next screen? What was happening in India at that point in time, and or what was happening in Britain with that directly influences Indian economic and legal framework. There is corporate governance, Companies Act, which allows a variety of joint stock companies registered in India or in UK to operate here. Then we have the Penal Code, Charter establishing high courts, Evidence Act, Contract Act, Municipal Act, judicial reforms. If you have to take one, bucket, we have financial and property, which is Bank of Bombay Charter, 1840, Bombay Stock Exchange in 1875, Negotiable Instruments Act, etc., etc. Shipping and railways, very, very important. Bombay Port Trust, Indian Registration of Ships Act, GAPR Act, BBCIR Act. Okay, and then we have the postal and telegraphs. Okay, so this is very, very important. So in this context, we should see what is happening here. At the same time, in Britain, when Prince Albert passes away, and he passes away, relatively at a young age, his memorial carries certain important symbolism. I mean, each part of his memorial carries symbolism. However, we will only look at the important ones that concern us for this context today. Look at agriculture on the left. Where my cursor is, this is agriculture on the left, if you can look at it closely. The middle one is manufacture, if you can see this, and the one on the right is commerce. So these are important concepts which are there, touted by the Victorian administrators, and that is a point of time the empire reaches out big time to what today are 64 Commonwealth countries. There is one more here, engineering on the right. Okay, so these four are important bulwarks of economy, polity, legality, and the empire itself. These show, put together, what progress is. Even today in any country, these are the critical bulwarks of progress. Similarly, if you look at the Commonwealth building, the Foreign Office, as it was called before, foreign, I mean, various names, it's broadly known as Commonwealth building. This is again Sir Gilbert Scott's masterpiece. And if you look at this on the left, you got science. If you can see here, you got science, you got manufacture here, and you got agriculture here. I hope you're all able to see this clearly. Ramesh, is the screen visible sufficiently for people to see?
Quite. I can see it on my mobile.
Perfectly fine. Perfect. No, it's a hygiene check I always do every 6-7 minutes because we don't want people getting left out. Then there is art on the right. If you can look at this one on the right, this is art. Next one is commerce. This entire building is a piece of art. Okay, this is commerce and this is literature. And the great thing about all this is I don't have to play a guessing game. All of this is labeled. So I didn't have to really rack my brains trying to figure out what it could be. So how does it transpire in India? Around the same time as British Bombay, Victorian Bombay was built, the Writers' Building in Calcutta, which housed the government, the central government of India at that time, has very similar sculptures being set up, which is agriculture, science, and then we have Minerva. We also have the rest like justice and all, but before I could take a photograph, I got shooed away by the police there. So I normally use my photographs so that it's kind of easier to get around. But you will get photographs online if you want to see more of this. Okay. So with this context, let's understand that progress at that point in time was a cohabitation of science, technology, trade, commerce, a mix of art, literature, opening up of mental horizons from a tightly conservative medieval age to the age of scientific revolution. The grand tours. The grand tours are important. They kind of bring certain neoclassical elements, cultures into this age. The celebration of the human body has become a part of Renaissance, post-Renaissance art. It blended well into the New Age culture of science when steam engines and mills and ships on long voyages brought together a time when power was perceptibly and in reality based on New Age science and an economic need to conquer new sources of raw material, new network for trade and markets to sell the goods from the production of the New Age science, whether iron, cotton, or others. So this is how things transpired then. So with this, we will move along. Okay. So during the, we'll come more to the. In conclusion, when we come, we will kind of conclude what various people have said about Bombay. But let's get on to the actual spaces that we want to see right now. So we are all aware that this area of Crawford Market was opened up after the fort was broken down. So let's look at this culture first. Okay. So had I not labeled it, till recently, not too many people could recognize this. And thankfully, it's got restored very beautifully. And we've had the fortune of Christopher London explaining so much to us yesterday that I'd be showing a candle to the sun. But then, since I am doing this presentation, I will show you this frieze. There are two friezes, frieze depicting agriculture and marketplace atop Crawford Market arches. Okay, so this is one, and this is the other. Okay, So the concept of a public space is important here because this market was set up for a purpose as a civic institution, and Crawford, being the first municipal commissioner, so that's another story. So we will just stick to the sculptural elements today, given the time, because each of these institutions has potential for long lectures. So, market is important as a place where the burgeoning new populace of Bombay is settling, outside the fort now, and the business areas and native towns could all come together. So this was a market where people of all types would come, all nationalities, ethnicities could come. This is what it normally looks like. Okay, so this is Crawford Market. Christopher London calls it Venetian Gothic, and it's got this beautiful arches and this clock tower. There are so many old pictures. I'm sure you would have seen. So this is important to understand as a symbolic marker of new urban geography. Okay, so while right from Gerard Onger's time, we had this aggressive commercial advocacy and all. It was more during Bartle Frere when cotton becomes very important. He used to call it a hobby of his or a passion of his, something to that effect. And railways have come in by this time. The municipal commission is set up. The corporation will just get set up around the corner. So everything is in a flux in the city, and this is actually setting up of Urbs Prima in India. So these monuments represent setting up of the foremost city. So this is how the Kipling fountain inside Crawford Market looks. Uh, uh, Thankfully, it has been dismantled a few months ago. When I saw it last, there are patras around. We hope it is restored as soon as possible. So this is what it looks like. It looked like when I saw it last. You got this reverse here. Now Kipling had set it up in a way that was Indian, as well as it was very British at that point in time. The mix of animals and the mix of flora, fauna, and the rivers and all. If most of you would have read Bombay Gothic, so I will not get into this. He's got a diagram of an. I think we showed it yesterday too. The way that it was supposed to be, the Burgess diagram, and how it was adapted by Kipling. That whole story is there. Do have a look at that in detail. But this is part of a lookup story, because very often when people go to buy fruits, vegetables, we do not see this at all. So this is that story. Okay. Then let us just get along to the actual symbolism of Herbs Prema Nindi. Then we come to the BMC corner, because now we are walking along from Crawford Market to the BMC CST crossing. I showed you the map at the beginning. I will keep looking at the map as we go by. Okay, so here it's important to understand the concept of Herbs Prema. We already spoke about this multiplicity of various economic initiatives, of dockyards, of trading, of people coming together, of different communities, of different levels of capability, everybody contributing differently. Shipping is critically important everywhere. So we will, when we end this lecture, I will quickly touch upon all thematic items in 2 minutes just for a conclusion. So Earth's Prema symbolizes pretty much what the first or primary city of India is. She's carrying a ship in her hand, and this is standing in front of the BMC building. This is interesting because Stevens, kind of nudged out Robert Chisholm to get this contract, and while sticking to broadly the Bombay Gothic, he had to have some Indo-Saracenic elements, because that's what was decided earlier. So the dome, etc., take Indo-Saracenic, but the rest of it, if you chop the dome off, it is pretty much a Bombay Gothic. And this statue by Hems really symbolizes what is important as an allegorical concept of Mumbai. Okay, so this is how the building looks. Otherwise, this is often not seen at all by what I labeled hurried customers coming out of CST. So this is how it looks like. Okay, so then let us just turn around and look at this picture. What is this picture? This is a statue of progress. Well, many people all sometimes we mistakenly say that Victoria and all. No, Victoria was down below on the facade. Above the clock, there's a blank canopy there now, so that's where it was. This is actually progress. And progress, as we discussed in the slides which we saw in London right now, this symbolizes a combination of multiple types of initiatives. Okay, so this is commerce. If you can look at this, uh, you've got Britannia with a trident, you've got commerce with an extended arm, and you've got the third figure holding a clipper in her hand. Look, who on earth would put a ship on top of a railway station? Because this is a concept that was very, very important. You can't have a port without railways, and you can't have railways leading nowhere. It has to have an outlet outside. It has to have a meaning. The railways was created to service the port connection to the hinterland so that cotton could go, goods could come, opium could go, lot of stuff could go and come. That whole purpose of railways was initially not passenger. Passenger railways happened because people had to move. More importantly, it was an industrial goods freight railways. That was the original commercial purpose. So that is where on a railway station you will have a symbol of a ship as well. This is something which really needs a zoom lens to see. You will normally not see it unless you look up. Similarly, if you look at the other side, you look at this. This broadly depicts engineering, naval engineering, shipping engineering, that whole genre. The statue on the other side is carrying an equipment used in ships, and this person here is carrying a propeller. Why a propeller is so important? See, if you look at the earlier one, this one carries a sail ship, this one carries a propeller. So this is so symbolic of the new age. This is about steamships, because by 1888 we had steamships, and that had revolutionized international trade. Suez Canal was opened by 1869, and the telegraph was opened by 1870. So, and modern ships. When we say modern, these are obviously steam-driven ships. Huge improvement over sailing ships. So all this had revolutionized the empire's network. So this is what it symbolizes. On the BST side, we've got agriculture, which has a cornucopia and wheat and stuff like that. Again, a very, very important political administrative item for the empire, because empire, of course, right up till 1947, hinged on the great Indian agricultural zamindari system. That was a main source of revenue for long. So the agriculture was always taken as a critical, piece of economy to manage, and we also saw it elsewhere too. So it is not that it is only in India; it is part of the overall context. Then when we hang out at CST, it's a World UNESCO World Heritage Site, so we take some 5 minutes more on this before getting along. We are doing well on time, so I'll take care of that. No worries. This is Marquis of Dalhousie, very important person as far as railways is concerned. He created a railway blueprint, the famous minutes, and also contributed to the postal system. So around his time, only both these things actually take the way that it transpired in a big way later. And in India, he also decided on the broad gauge, not the British gauge, but the broad gauge, which is important again, because that's what even today defines, economics of railway freight. So this is Marquis of Dalhousie, also famous for doctrine of lapse. Okay, so then this is Sir Bartle Frere, the visionary governor who we spoke about in beginning of this presentation. He's looking at us from CST all the time, and it is so interesting that when you stand at Aram Badapav having a Kothumbi Badi and a Kari Panna, you can look at Bartle Frere looking at Herbs Prema and Indus, and probably with his stony eyes casting one eye at you as well. I mean, at that one spot, it is an epiphany of understanding the concept of Herbs Prema and what effort went into creating the city that it is now. So this is Bartle Frere. There's a lot more about him, but we will kind of pass on for now. This is Lord Reay, governor at the time when DT was built. Okay. Then this is Mount Stuart Elphinstone. We know him all for his education reforms and for having put together the Bombay Presidency. So he comes into power just after the Maratha Wars, and that's the time the Bombay Presidency has to be created and put to and administrative stability, and he sets up the education, the Native Education Society. I mean, that's a full genre of literature. I mean, please do have a look at it. So the Elphinstone education reforms have gone a long, long way to introducing public education and a mix of vernacular and English education, and the setting up of several educational institutions, of which, of course, Elphinstone College being one, and that kind of set the tone for the Woods Dispatch and Mumbai University later. If you read Ornament to the City, the book published by the Mumbai University, it's a lot of stories on that genre which you would like to read about. This is Jagannath Shankar Sheth, very, very important person, both from a trading and philanthropic perspective. He is important for having been the Indian spearhead for founding of railways. He and Sir J.J. had critically contributed to the British government and the British investors' effort in demanding railways here. And that demand of railways, after tomorrow's quiz, I'll tell you where it took place, because I don't want to give away the answer. I will give away the answer tomorrow. I just remembered, some place. So he is important. Okay, so, and this is Sir JJ. Sir JJ, we know him for several philanthropic activities, whether it be hospital, whether it be educational institutions, of course, the School of Art, Architecture. So, I mean, he himself it's too far an iconic figure. And his reputation across the world was so immensely strong. On his word, prices in international markets could change. And those days, remember, there were no electronic media. Any message had to take the time that it had to go in a ship. So everything was based on judgment, trust, and the word. Let's say I will buy at so and so price, and you sell at so and so price, or you buy at so and so price, I will sell at so and so price on so and so date. He had an enormous reputation internationally. Then we have Colonel Holland, at one point of time the head of GAPR as well. And this is Thomas Watt, managing director at a point of time of the GAPR. Okay. Okay, now the next person is very, very important. See, more than administrators, I have a liking for scientists actually, because they kind of change uh, civilization. This is Berkeley. Berkeley was the chief engineer for the GAPR, Great Indian Peninsula Railway. He is a person who figured out how to put train lines not only Bombay to Thana, but then all the way up to Borghat, and the entire science of laying railways in an alien land when they did not even know the terrain. You have to start with surveys, you have to get iron, you have to get cement, you have to get bricks, and a lot of it had to be imported. Most of it rather had to be imported. So the whole science of laying railway lines and railway bridges, at least in India, I think we credit to Berkeley. He is looking at us on the BST side of CST. Please do have a look at it next time you kind of take a bus from there. And there's a lot about Berkeley we can talk about. I mean, there are times when I do a railway focused walk, which is CST and WR and the Port Trust. So we will talk more about Berkeley. Recently, we had broken the Borghat Bridge, if you remember, just when lockdown started. All that was his brainchild, actually. Then, of course, we've got gargoyles, spouts, and very typical early medieval Gothic. Then we have Indian elements, which is like peacock and peahens and stuff like that. Okay, this is very important. The next one I want to explain a little more. This is again a natives. Okay, that the natives of Bombay. You have different faces with different headgear depicted here. This is a concept. Okay, so the British government at that point in time wanted to turn more participative. When we say participative, it may not have been in terms of legislative accountability or a participative government, but it meant that this is not a hostile government here. It wanted people to contribute together. And Bombay, let us remember, we should not look at as a homogeneous, unilinear development of Indian history, because pretty much till about 1940, the unilinear concept did not exist. different pockets of geography ruled by different kings or by administrators and presidencies had different tangents of history at the way they evolved. Bombay did not see the bloodshed of the residency in Lucknow or that of Calcutta when or that of Plassey or that of the conquest of Delhi. There was no bloodshed here, barring some very relatively minor incidents in 1857. But Bombay was a city of joint enterprise, as Preeti Chopra says. Preeti Chopra's books, I think I read, and articles I really like for the sense of social dynamics that she brings on and the kind of joint effort of Indians and the government and investors, British investors, private investors who were closely involved in building a city which had that kind of cohesion, economic purpose. The cohesion of economic purpose is pretty much what drives us even today. And while each community held on to its beliefs and its way of life, the British government ensured no religious interference. I mean, compared to the Portuguese Inquisition or certain other excesses committed by various other, political rulers earlier of various communities, this came as a great, pleasant surprise, and people were happy to contribute, collaborate together. So there is a meaning to this. So these kind of sculptures, whether it be on CST, whether in High Court, unfortunately, we can't photograph inside. You can only photograph from outside, from far away. So I could never get those photos. But if you read Sharda Dwivedi's book, you'll be able to get a few pictures. So we also have natives as we come along. We will have it on the university library. So then we have this griffins and stuff like that. We will move on to we will just step inside CST for a moment. Okay, this comes under lookup actually, because this is one place where you can go in with a ticket and look inside. This is the stained glass. There are about quite a few of this left inside the dome. If you look at this, this is again lookup. If you can look up here, you got the elephant, Great India Peninsular Railways. You got this here, you got the logo, and you've got a train. I mean, you've got a steam engine here. Just look at the symbolism. This is important. This comes as part of lookup. This, of course, necessitates you crick your neck, look up all the way till wherever you can go up and then look up. So this is another crick your neck photo. You've got the squinches. You've got this awesome dome. This dome became very, very important in the architectural history of India. And of course, Stevens, for all right reasons, gets credit for it. But strangely, people forget Stevens was a PWD product. People think he suddenly came as the god of architecture. No, he honed his skills in a Sarkari PWD here, having cleared an interview and a selection process in UK. So when we actually do sometime we can do a longer discussion on how this control of military engineers moved on to non-military but PWD people and then on to actual architects. That's a very interesting journey. So this is where probably was the cusp of the journey. When an ex-PWD person could create something so magnanimously creative. Then when we keep looking up in CST, you have this enormous amount of flora fauna. Now this is a snake and a mongoose. Have a look at this. And an enormous contribution by the JJ school. That time, great founders and people, like Griffith and all had really trained people. And I mean, it's an amazing set of people, amazing set of circumstances, committed passion that came together. Whether it is art, whether it is creating commerce or railways, the passion of creating something new. So this is so important. When you look at this minuscule works of art in such a grand scale, one really doesn't look at these things. That's the reason I wanted to bring this PPT up so that you start looking up and looking up from your WhatsApp and other mundane stuff and start looking at this awesome open air museum that we live in. So these are some are mythical stuff also. Then we step out of CST and we are good on time. Okay, so we stepped out of CST now. This is what you normally see. You normally step out, you take a taxi and you go somewhere and forget about it. So this is pretty much what we saw and came out. Okay, so then let us walk down and we will teleport ourselves into Standard Chartered building, which is 2325 MG Road, just behind Flora Fountain. Okay, let us imagine that we walked, in that alley next to Sterling. Okay, so we took that very fast walking area and we came to Standard Chartered Bank. Now, Standard Chartered Bank originated around 1853 by John Wilson, who had also founded The Economist. Now, he was interested in setting up a bank in India for a very simple purpose, that the empire did not have an exchange bank, because the Indian banks at that point in time, the residency banks did not have exchange business. What is exchange business? Basically, international business. You could buy in rupees, sell in dollars, sell in rupees. Even if you're buying something in Hong Kong, selling in India, or you're buying something in India, selling in UK, the bank would carry the transaction pretty much the way modern banks do. So Indian banks were wary of getting into that for various reasons, and the government wasn't too conducive at that point in time. It was the East India Company, and they were not modern administrators. They were more of running their company for the benefit of their directors and investors. These entrepreneurial investments supported by government come around the cusp when 1857, 1858, when the whole government machinery changes. So while this bank was founded in 1853, it starts operating in Calcutta in 1858. So it is, for most of us who think it's a very oh so British bank, no bank could be more desi than this. The original branch, the first branch still exists now at 4 NS Road, Calcutta, and very soon after the Bombay branch opens. This building is dated to around 1900. Why this building is so important is between Frederick Stevens dying and Charles Stevens coming up, this building is built. Okay, so it's very very. It is a change of an age. It is a change of an age. Okay, so if you look at, is the top of my screen visible, or are you seeing a black dot there? My box is coming here. Ramesh, is the top of my screen visible? Madhu, is the top of my screen visible?
Yes, we can
It's,
see the.
it's
Hello?
visible.
Okay. Yeah, kindly one of you be on unmute so that whenever I need to check, I can check with some of you, because sometimes I like to confirm that I'm visible and I'm audible. Okay, so on the top of the screen, you have Britannia standing with a trident. You have these three girls. One is in a sari, okay, and one is Australia, one is China. So this is basically frieze depicting symbols of India, Australia, and China under the careful guardianship of Britannia. And let's come down where my cursor is. You can look at Britannia here, sitting with the pet lion, and you have an elephant, and you have a ship, and you have sheep. What do this have? This is Britannia's, of course, Britain. And you have elephant for India, ship for China, and sheep for Australia. This is Chartered Bank of India, Australia, and China for you. Okay. So the reason I bring up the lookup stuff first and then the larger building is then you put the name to the context. So this is what the building otherwise looks like. Ordinary bank, pretty efficient, boring, whatever you call, but very few people, unfortunately, their own people do not know their history, because I needed to know a lot more on a few other things. But I think this is one building which deserves a look much longer than the passing look that we give by. I think there's some annotation happening. Can we just remove that annotation, please? Okay, let me just remove the annotation. 1 second. Let me do clear all drawings. Yes. Okay. Then I go to the next slide. Then we kind of walk down. We will talk more on Standard Chartered later. We will just finish the walk and then we can have a longer chat. Okay, then we go to Churchgate. This is on top of the Bombay Baroda Central Indian Railways. Another of Stevens' great buildings. Now, a lot of debate does happen. Those domes look more Indo-Sassanid, the bottom looks more Bombay Gothic, but I think Christopher London settles it pretty much, saying the mass is largely Venetian Gothic, and it's got Indo-Saracenic elements. And since he's already talked all about it yesterday, so I'm not repeating anything. So look at the statue of engineering. You got this cherubs carrying railway cogs, and this is carrying a railway engine. Awesome piece, awesome piece. This is all Rusco Mullins, and Rusco Mullins had done the Standard Chartered sculptures as well as these. And I think I forgot to mention the four great statues of the CST were by Thomas Yerp and Company, the Progress Agriculture, Science, and Progress Agriculture, Science, and Naval Engineering. Those are by Thomas Yerp. The ones in BMC was by Hems, and this one is by Roscoe Mullins. And you will also get to see Colonel French and Kennedy roundel busts on the BBC HQ, now the Western Railway head office. I mean, these are the founders of the Western Railway. Okay, as we pass along, you will look at the allegorical figure which is holding a crest which is BBCIR. Okay, so this is important. And I think I should also have a picture of a line holding a similar one for CSE. I don't think I put it up here. I'll try to put it up if you have time at the end of the lecture. So this is what the building looks like now. And it's undergoing renovation, and CST and this building both are undergoing renovation. But unfortunately, a lot of the sculptural elements have been plastered upon, which is a cause of concern to many of us heritage lovers. So these photos are pre-restoration, and I do feel that these are depicting the finer form of the art more than what you can see now. Now we go to the map, and as we progress, we are more than halfway. I mean, we are about halfway through the walk and little more than halfway through the time. So we will continue. Okay. So CST, I had to spend more time because it deserved a kind of time, and the rest of it we will kind of look at it a little faster. Okay, so this is where we are going to go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 we have done. We are now going to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, this whole cluster. This is basically we are getting into High Court, University, and the Kalagoda area and the Regal area. So this is that area. If you look at this, High Court and all. So this is where we are coming. I've numbered it so that we know the direction in which we are coming. So we are getting onto the Oval Maidan and coming to the High Court. This is justice atop the High Court. It's very important to understand why these concepts of justice and mercy and all are put up. See, India always had some kind of a well-organized judicial system which has functioned for the last 1,000+ years, under various kings and sultans and zamindars and rajas and whatever. But then when we are part of an international empire and ruled by a colonial administration, the need for codification arises because there are people fighting cases on different kind of grounds, on different kind of issues than what the earlier framework would have made it easy to resolve. At the same time, one must understand the British government then insisted on codification and writing down. I mean, the codification and the whole genre of separating criminal and civil cases was very important because they had to figure out what is a case between two people of the same community or family, which is more personal in nature, or what are those criminal cases where the state versus so and so has to happen, and in which case the state will not look at different subjects with different laws because of their own community or the law they are covered in. It's a very revolutionary change because the penal code we know is uniform. The civil code, of course, the personal laws are based on traditional community-based laws. So, and the concept of creating a high court, creating an appellate, creating the whole process of the judicial framework, this barristers, lawyers, judges, appointments, and this whole kind of thing, which kind of transforms the judicial framework. That happens at this point in time. So when they put up these statues of justice, mercy, it is a concept they're putting up. Unfortunately, High Court does not allow photography at various points, but I have been fortunate to go inside several times, with Mr. Rajan Jekar, who conducts a walk there. So please do avail of that opportunity as and when that happens. I would in fact request the MRC to have that conducted whenever things permit. It's an awesome set of art that you see inside. We can't say all of it on a walk, but yes, you can get a fair glimpse of a lot of things. So this is what the High Court looks like from outside when you look at it from across the oval. And this is by Fuller, a very typical European Gothic style, and with gable roofs, with steeples, and there are certain, this kind of windows here, this balconies here. I mean, architecture itself is a full-fledged topic that, I mean, being a UNESCO World Heritage Site, of course, there are several write-ups on this. So we will just pass by. We were interested in the statues today, so we will just move along. Okay, then let us come along to the Rajabai Tower. Now, we all know the Mumbai University main complex was set up with the munificence of Prem Chandra Roychand and Kawasji Jahangir, and of course from the government side also supported. So this building is interesting. Gilbert Scott designs this without coming to India, and apparently designed it in such a lavish way. The local administration felt it's difficult, and they kind of subdued it. So what we see now and we gape and marvel at is supposedly the subdued version. Okay, and the whole shape and the structure may look like a church, but interestingly, there is not a single religious ecclesial element in it. However, the structural form is more like a religious establishment, and that is very typical of a Gothic structure, which was largely also catering to churches, mainly into that form of architecture and sculptural art. So these natives here are very, very important. I think there are 24 statues like this all around. This is a close-up which I've taken of the topmost. You can see 8 of them here. Now, why these are important, we need to understand Mumbai University was set up because of both the commerce as well as, very, very importantly, a large section of Indian social reformers pushing for it. Nothing can be imposed top down if the public doesn't want. At the same time, nothing can work if the public demands, wants something, yet the government does not give. So it has to be a lucky symbiosis of public and government working together, which thankfully happened at that point in time, thanks to Elphinstone who started it, but then of course various other people took over, because 1854 onward, when the university is set up in 1857 and onward, the culture permitted this. You have a lot of Indian reformers who are in for Western education and a mix of Indian and Western education both, and for education in science, which they believe was the new world. These statues are important. I mean, I remember one quote from Kaivan Mehta's Alison Buleshwar. He calls it a colonial story an anthropological story in colonial stone. Very powerful statement. Okay, so this is the story. There are some of these awesome statues here. Awesome statues, actually. I mean, since then, I've seen this building in various types of restoration, which is good. So I've not been able to update these pictures. But yes, I mean, quite a few of these pictures were taken a few years earlier. Okay. Then let us kind of walk around into the Kalagoda area. Let's come to the Sassoon library. So this is important because Sassoon family had, while they had come from come from the Middle East, Baghdadi Jews facing certain kind of issues, and Sassoon himself underwent persecution, administrative persecution. So Bombay kind of welcomed people from anywhere and everywhere to do trade, business, entrepreneurship, and you could create a living here by contributing, which is pretty much the way that we people still live here. So the Sassoon family sets up several businesses, whether it is mills, whether it is long distance trade, several initiatives, and of course philanthropy. So this, just one moment, please. Am I visible? I mean, is everything visible clearly to all of you? Can somebody do a check, please, Ramesh? Ramesh, Sanya, am I audible? Am I visible?
Yeah, audible
You are
and
very audible and very visible. Don't worry at all.
Okay, perfect. So, David Sassoon Library, built by Albert David Sassoon in memory of his father, originally an institution for employees of the Royal Mint and Government Dockyard, established in 1847. So 1863 onward, 60,000 they had donated for this, and Sassoon family has contributed significantly to architectural embellishments in the city. We will discover that as we go along. I mean, people desirous of reading more on that should read Pushkar Soni and Kenneth Robbins' book on Jewish, contribution in Mumbai. This is where John Lockwood Kipling and I mean, he and Jamshedji and several other traders, Indian traders, are all part of the opium trade. So that obviously brought a lot of wealth to the city. So this all happens between 1860s and late 1860s when the cotton boom. And I didn't get into it too much in detail because the story is too well known. I am not getting into things which are already too commonplace information. But for purpose of people who are not acquainted, I'll just spend a minute on this. 1865 is a very important year. Actually, 1860s itself. The reason being the U.S. Civil War cuts off cotton supply to UK. So India is pretty much the only place they can depend. And while India was not long staple cotton, they had to make do with what they have. And from 1840 itself, they had discovered that this is a new source of cotton that they could tap, and the British mills ran on Indian cotton, pushing the prices phenomenally up. And at the same time, when stockbroking started, when share market and the concept of joint stock, at the same time, reclamations are happening. At the same time, shipping companies, banking, finance companies, and the great triangulation. When we have the same entrepreneurs running three different businesses, often conflicting with one another, all that happens in 1860s. That is the time when people wanted to get rid of the fort and open up real estate. That is pretty much when people discover real estate being important. I'm bringing up the story here when I'm looking at Sassoon because he is symbolic of all that we saw now. He, Jamshedji Jiji Boy, Jagannath Sankar Sheth, Forbes, whereas all these people, whether British or Indian, they were pretty much hand in glove in doing business together. People of different communities. Premchand Roy Chand, very important personality. Okay, so Rajabai Tower, I refer to it in passing, but Premchand Roy Chand munificence to the city was magnanimous. Also, he becomes the first, what do I call, the progenitor of a financial scam by being the director of Bank of Bombay and having a collusion with the manager and doing indiscriminate lending. That's a story for another day, but we will continue with David Sassoon for now. Okay, I had to bring this in now because it gives a sense of economic understanding. So why Sassoon? We need to understand that. Okay, so this is what it looks like from outside. It's still a functional library doing well. Um, then just a couple of words on the Jewish conglomerates. The three Baghdadi Jew conglomerates became mill owners, major mill owners in Mumbai: Baikala, Chichkopli, Mahim, Mazgaon, Parel, Shivdi. The Sassoon spinning and weaving mill 1877 is very important. Sir Sassoon Jacob David was president of the Bombay Mill Owner Association, promoting favorable working hours. So Jacob Sassoon Mill was the largest in Mumbai. They adopted English over Arabic. So a lot of this cultural change is also happening at that point in time. Okay, it's 10:56 and we will progress to Elphinstone. Okay, so let us look at Elphinstone building. So Sir Kawasji Jahangir's bust here. This is again, often missed actually. Most people go to the archives, most people go to the college, but I think it's important to look. So this is where the lookup is. And we will look at the main building now. Okay, so we all know Elphinstone College. I will not get too deep into this, but it is the symbol of New Age education as it came by. This also had another building in Baikala, the now Railway Hospital, exquisite Bombay Gothic. We will do that sometime when we do a Baikala talk. But for now, we will look at Sir Kawasji Jahangir here, who has contributed so much more to the city than what we normally see. Yesterday, we had An awesome walk on Piaus by Rahul, and we spoke of Kawaji Jahangir Fountain. So this is Kawaji Jahangir for you. Okay, then when we kind of walk around, look at the Institute of Science, which is right adjacent to it. Okay, this is a frieze which is on top of the gate. If you can see this Institute of Science, now it is very, very interesting that Vitek could create something so different every time he put his mind to creating something different. You have a Prince of Wales Museum, Indo-Saracenic, completely different. You have a Gateway of India, Indo-Saracenic, but reasonably different. You have a Ballad Bandar, which is different. You have a Ballad Estate, the overall guidelines, if you look at the Edward and Renaissance, that is so different. If you look at KM, of course, it's different. If you look at Royal Institute of Science, it's again different. Wittig is one person we need to understand in greater detail. And I just want to point out these friezes on the Institute of Science today, which often are left unnoticed. I don't know how many of you have looked at this frieze on the Institute of Science. While I have not discovered the philosophical nuances of this picture completely, I am privileged to have some help from some experts on this. I'm yet to write on this, but this frieze is on Royal Institute of Science. If you look at these griffins and you look at this, I mean, this looks like a flame. I don't know if you've really seen these pictures because in Royal Institute of Science, people are more acquainted with the MGMA. This is what we are acquainted with normally. We go in, we see the museum and the paintings and all that. And of course, students who go to the Institute of Science do go there, but that's pretty much it. I think we've forgotten the building, and I mean, for the right reasons, we go to the NGMA. I mean, it's a great piece of art, great piece of art expo. But I think we need to step out of the building and also look at the building also once in a while. So that is exactly the purpose of doing this whole lookup story. Okay. Then let me let me go to Regal. Okay, Regal becomes very, very important as a harbinger of new age architecture. Art Deco name was not given those days. The Art Deco name comes in 1960s. Those days it was just modern architecture. And interestingly, Charles Stevens built this right next to, I mean, it was obviously serendipity, next to his father's first building, which was a milestone, which is a Bombay Gothic milestone, which is Royal Alfred Sailor's Home. So that's pure serendipity, honestly. It wasn't planned that way. But the first building of, I mean, the first and, the milestone in architecture, which is Royal Alfred Sailor's Home, stands right next to Regal, which is by Regal is by Charles Stevens, Art Deco. And look at this step facade, look at this geometric designs, and look at this Greek mythological classical figures, the Art Deco font, and of course the Lion King is playing here. What better? Okay, and we get along to. I'm not showing you Wellington Fountain yet. Let's just get along the circle, then we will look at the fountain. Okay. Well, normally what we do, we park at the fountain and look around. But today, since we are walking, we can go to the fountain later. Now, this is a Royal Alfred Sailor's Home, later the home of the legislature, and later the home of the Maharashtra Police, which is the DG's office today. Now, we are interested in this frieze up here. This frieze up here where you see. Now, Preeti Chopra has an interesting article on philanthropy and state, how it kind of was selective to certain communities and all that. So here the Baroda Maharaja contributes to this. This is built for European sailors, but nowhere the decision said it is only for European sailors, but that's the way it was intended to be. And later on, this building is used for the legislature. This is again, this entire building was embellished by J.J. Kipling and these people, and this is by Bolton. This is Neptune. Okay, this is Neptune. If you can see this. Well, all this, a lot of this was covered yesterday, so I have the liberty of going a little faster on this. Okay, so this place is important because this sets the new urban geography, the new axis. These buildings. This is all 1870s. Okay, so then we pass along. We just spoke about Vitet and we spoke about the CVSBM. This is Prince of Wales statue, quite often not looked at or not understood. This is where George Wade, again contributed by the Sassoon family. This is as Prince of Wales when he came to India, in honor of that. And these friezes are important. We will also look at one of these friezes on the side. This is okay. This is the one. This is a sculpture of reception of King George V on pedestal of statue. So this is one. And the other one, I don't think you can see it clearly, but this was laying out the foundation of the museum. So today we're not looking at the museum per se, it's largely on the sculptural art. So I'll just bypass the museum and get along to the fountain because we have about 14 minutes left. So I will keep time and I finish on time, no worries. Okay, this is a Duke of Wellington, and why he's important in Mumbai is between 1799 and 1803, the Mysore Wars and then the Anglo-Maratha Wars concluded, and actually Anglo-Maratha was concluded in 1818. But the critical wars what Wellington fought, whether it was Assaye, Gavilgad, Pavangad, and all those critical battles, Ahmednagar, all that were his doings because he brings a new age of British ascendancy. He puts the Peshwa back to Pune, defeats India at Assaye, and having defeated, he makes some diplomatic partners, and the India's, as we know, right up to independence, continued comfortably in the British Empire. Okay, and so the Duke of Wellington and his military exploits are given here. Now, it is even more important to understand after he went from India, what did he do? He defeated Napoleon, which is so important. Without the defeat of Napoleon, we could well have lost India to the French. I mean, that was a plan at one point of time. Tipu Sultan even had that, he would be friends with the French and, get a better, political alignment here. So this is Vimera, Douro, Busaco, Rolica, Neville, Nive, Orchio, Toulouse, Waterloo. Waterloo, if you remember Waterloo, I think we'll all remember the defeat of Napoleon. Here you have Kanangar, Assaye, Ahmednagar, Argom, Gavilgad, Seringapatanam, Pavangarh. Pretty much everything that mattered to the British at that point in time. So, and Duke of Wellington, I mean, he was Otto Wellesley then, he becomes Duke later. He had come to Mumbai twice on official work, and at one time he was welcomed as a hero and all those, the protocol and stuff like that. So it's important to understand the social dimension, political dimension, what art exhibits. So far we have covered so many places. We have covered about 14 places. We have 4 or 5 more to go. So we'll rush along. So this is where we are. We are at somewhere near Kalagura, and we are just, we are at Wellington walking towards New India Assurance. So we will look at New India Assurance. Now, interestingly, by 1930s, what happens is Indian entrepreneurs have set shop in new areas, including insurance, banking, and stuff like that. Dorabji Tata sets up New India Assurance. For most of us who do not recognize this as a Tata company, this was a Tata company, yes. New India Assurance comes with this beautiful building, and if you look at this closely, this is a chaka weaving woman. This is the symbolism of Indian political independence. Interestingly, Dorabji Tata was an Anglophile, so I find it very interesting that they adopted this. Maybe the building came up along after he died. That's possible. So, but this set of sculptures which symbolize labor, which symbolize the respect of common man's industry, which respect Indian art, because Art Deco now, from being, I mean, Art Deco is not an imposed piece of art. Art Deco is something that evolves in Mumbai as much as it evolves abroad. And the whole genre of Indian architects or British architects or those working in partnerships together, they have kind of adopted this together, which is so important because this kind of shows the joint vision of the city, the new turning political pages of the empire at that point in time, and the wishes of an aspiring Indian populace, which is so important when it comes to economy. Okay, so this is where we need to understand this whole thing. So this building is mid 1930s, Master Satin Butta. Sculptures are by N.G. Pansare. So this is an important building, critically important milestone building. If you call me, NC Pansara is a very very important person. Okay, there's too much to talk on him. I would request you all to look him up at some point in time. So here we have lamb, bird, cogwheel, pottery, basket, basically hard work and result kind of a theme, you know. So these grand sculptures blend with the bas reliefs. You look at these up here at this point of time, you know, typically your Egyptian, Aztec, and all this, Greek, everything gets mixed up. You know, that's what Art Deco, because 1920s onwards, a lot of old world histories are being brought up. So Art Deco uses several elements because there are no given rules people can create, and yet there is a certain homogeneity around it. So this new India Assurance building is very important. Now, as you walk along the corridor, don't miss these two statues as well. Okay, these two often get missed. Everybody sees the ones outside. I would request you to see the ones on the side. This is when you enter the building. These are two pictures. I had to rush along and take these pictures recently. Okay, so having said that, let us kind of trudge along a little towards where Asiatic is. We are basically walking towards the Ballad Estate side. Okay, so we are good on time. We have about 10-20 minutes more. Okay, we will look at Turner Morrison building. Turner Morrison is a very important company in the shipping world, trading shipping world. After the P&O and after Nicole, it was Turner and Morrison, which was a very important company. If you look at Turner Morrison, you have these ship sterns made on it. I mean, it's there all over. I took one picture only. So you have the ship stern. So do have a look at it as you pass by. This is bang opposite the Asiatic only, just across Honeyman Circle. Then let us assume we walk by the Asiatic and we get onto Ballard Estate corner. So this area comes up where I mean around 1898, 1900, this building comes up, Marshall House. So this is Britannia for you, and this is by Charles Stevens. Now, interestingly, the type of architecture is changing at that point in time. This is before Ballard Estate actually is laid out, but this is just at the crossing. Now, this is where the old wall would have been, you know, when it went on Mint Road. 1928, the road, anyway, the PM road starts cutting across the new Bombay, which is cutting across the native town, which we see today as the insurance buildings and all that comes up. So this building predates all that. This is approximately 1900. Britannia with a line on a cog wheel. How much more interestingly, intensively symbolic of engineering and Britain can be put together. This is Marshall Engineering for you. Okay. So this is what the building looks like. Unfortunately, this building is not restored. And I was there for some banking transaction recently, and it was quite sad to look at the way it's kind of derelict now. I mean, the annex houses a very famous bank where I have some work. So this is the beginning of Ballard Estate. As we walk along, let us just step into the step into Shurji Vallabhdas Road. This is terms of ships at the port house. Now, when Whitted kind of lays out this whole plan, Whitted worked for the port trust as well as worked for the government, very prolific person. So this building is by him. A few words on the Bombay Port Trust, important to understand why it comes up. The Bombay Chamber of Commerce was established in 1836, was already lobbying for a better port. Bartle Frere believed getting new port was critically important. New docks are critically important. Otherwise, there was no point running a city like this, which had such great potential. And this was the reason why Bombay became important. Mills came because of the port and the shipping capabilities, not the other way around. Otherwise, we could have set up mills somewhere in Gujarat or wherever the cotton was, which is eventually what happened. So the port is the existential raison d'etre for a long, long time. Now, unfortunately, things are different, but yes, it's important to understand. So Victoria Dock 1888, Princess Dock 1880, Alexandra Docks 1914 followed in the next 30 years after this setup of Bombay Port Trust. In addition to various other additions to port facilities, Princess Dock was built with stone from Wales, as if Bombay stone was not good enough, on a lighter note. So 1873, while it is set up, a lot of private docks still operated, like Sassoon Dock 1875, Colaba Land Company, Musgon Land Company, Frere Land Company. A lot of this was run by the reclamation companies, who are also finance companies, also running cotton companies, also running banks. So obviously post 1870, everything crashed when the great crash happened, when cotton prices came down after US again started supplying cotton to Britain. So the port trust steps in as a critical infrastructural a company set up for this purpose of stabilizing this whole thing when private entrepreneurs, standalone entrepreneurs could not manage this. And it was so important. That's the time the empire is being set up. And this whole Portress setup, I mean, if you read the Tides of Time, which is a Portress publication, it's available for free. Okay, it's available for free on their own website. Please do have a look at it. Very interesting book. There are various other books on maritime history. I mean, sometimes actually in MRC we do these talks. I mean, I would encourage you to join us on a full talk on this next time, but we can talk about the bibliography if you have time later. So Ballard Estate comes up at that point in time, and it faces Ballard Bandar, which is a sea face gate, and that actually becomes a gateway in various real ways, because you have the greatest of ships, both passenger and cargo and military and everything coming there. And there is this Portress Railway, which carries both the feeder into the Central Railways and to the Western Railways, which is GIPR and DBCAR respectively. Whether we talk of the Imperial Indian Mail to Calcutta, or we talk of Frontier Mail to Western the Punjab, this is where it originated. So the Bombay Port building, when you look at it, it is just not a building. It is an entire civilizational nucleus which encompasses shipping, it encompasses infrastructure, it encompasses First World War history, it encompasses railway history, and it and encompasses a lot of financial consolidation. What was possible. So the Bombay Port Trust is important to understand. So eventually, the railways dwindled, the port is dwindling, but that's story for another day. So this picture I've taken from my MHS book. I'm acknowledging that after B. Arunachalam, Mumbai with the Sea, page 49. Just have a look at this entire range of the dockyards here. When you talk about GAPR store yards, P&O company yard, BAS and British Industry Navigation, ferry, etc., etc. Okay, we're at 11:15. Okay, 5 minutes more. We conclude. So this is the customs house. This is an iconography there. Then we step on to Kamani Road. This is British India Steam Navigation Buildings. Now Kamani Chambers. This is a British line holding an orb. The P&O and the British India Steam Navigation Company ruled the waters for a good 40-50 years. Enormous tonnage, virtually monopolized. And this was part of the Mackinnon Mackenzie, the P&O and the BS, and they were all one group actually, one group of investors, and they merged somewhere in 1915, 1920. So it becomes a giant monopolistic company hosted and supported by the government. Okay, so that's a very large piece of maritime history, which sometime we can talk about. But it's important to understand the symbolism of that line with the orb. It is virtually the British private shipping which held monopoly for a long time. The first tripartite tried to break it when Walsh and Hirachan set it up. Second tripartite didn't break it. Third tripartite finally around 1935 allowed them Indian access to the high seas. But then this building is important. As we walk along, this is Walsh and Hirachan's construction house. This is very important. This is an Art Deco building here, and I want to touch upon Walsh and Hirachan in a very important way. He actually takes the lead in sending a big ship to UK at his personal risk, because the British were not happy with Indians going on the sending ships on the high seas. It was not really permissible, but somewhere he manages to do that. And after that, they of course come back with a lot of restrictions, economic restrictions. Nobody likes a monopoly being challenged, especially if you're part of the colonial setup. So that's the reason Maritime Day is celebrated now in memory and remembrance of the first time Walsh and Hirachan and Narottam Moraji sailed the ship out. Okay, very close space, Neptune and Mackinnon Mackenzie building. Neptune we know is a lot of sea. This is what it looks like. And as we come out of Ballard Estate, we see Mulji Fountain. This is, these are pre-restoration pictures. So have a look at Mulji Fountain when you go by. This is where Mulji Jk in memory of his dead son. Okay, so Indo-Saracenic architecture by Frederick Stevens, very important. Okay, so it's a private assignment he did. Then let us get on to Lakshmi building. Now we are in the Art Deco district. Lakshmi building is very, very important because now we are dealing with Indian companies. Okay, we're dealing with a company which even somebody like Lala Lajpat Rai, Motilal Nehru supported. This entire area is old Bazaar Gate premises, which was cut upon in 1920 to create a new commercial district and basically to clean up the place as well. So this connects DN Road to Ballard Estate. This becomes a new kind of a town city road, main road. So Indian figures are now coming here. This is Lakshmi, and a lot of Indian insurance companies. A lot of Indian insurance companies had come up at that point in time because British companies were charging higher premiums from Indians. So probably they were not comfortable with the risk factor and actual stuff. So Lakshmi building for you here, nicely restored recently. So it has this elephants, it has these kind of things. These are these elephants on Lakshmi building, an awesome, beautiful, band which runs all through the building. One building which I definitely want to emphasize upon is adjacent to this, just about 2 buildings away. Okay, Lakshmi building, if I may just mention one important name, this is V.A. Kamath. Okay, V.A. Kamath, the sculptor. I think I need to acknowledge that most importantly. Let's come to Onlooker building. This is People's Insurance Company. Not much is known about this insurance company now. I have tried finding out from people in Lahore. They have not been able to tell me. This is a company which was housed in Lahore and had a big office here. This is Swadeshi. This is a woman with a flag and with the charka on it. A very fiercely Swadeshi sculptor here. And you have four of these awesome balconies. Let's look at them close by. These are the balconies which are showing enterprise, which are showing hard work, which are showing public hard work, whether it is textiles, whether it is some kind of cleaning, whether it is labor. If you look at this, people are toiling, building. This is Indian labor. This is a celebration of labor. So the drivers of Art Deco now, while on one side Art Deco also had princely houses, it had this Hollywood inspired movie halls. That is one side of Art Deco. The other side of Art Deco on the sculptural side is public, what we may call democratic plebeian, symbolism. So Art Deco flourishes in different ways. The Marine Drive architecture, the nautical symbols, that is one side. The PM Road is different. If you go to the other, is different. It's a whole new genre. But this building, we know very little of this building. I read in the Art Deco Mumbai website that Shivash Chavda, famous artist of JJ, he was involved in this as well. And this buildings were B doctor. But I have not been able to find too much from primary sources on this. Hopefully I should be able to sometime in future. But these buildings are worth a look. These photos were taken 2 years ago. Now these freezers are not so clean, so I prefer to use older pictures. Opposite this is Western House. These are again very beautiful sculptures of Indian business or Indian themes with Indian characters. This is what is Indie Deco or Bombay Deco sculptures. Naveen Ramani and Sharda Dwivedi have written books on easy usage layman books on this. So please do have a look. And as we're concluding almost at the end of this walk, we come out back to DN Road and we look at this awesome frieze of Helios. This is, on the Sun Life Assurance of Canada, another Victorian charter company. And this is what the building looks like. This is on DN Road. This is where the old fort wall was. And after it broke, Hornby Road came. And this road has a mix of Gothic, neoclassical, and one building is Art Deco as well. So it's a complete mix of various styles. So this is one neoclassical building which you must have a look. Then we end the walk at Petit, and Petit is another family donated institution. From being a fort library to being what it is today, the Petit family has had nurtured it and donated enormously. There is one little bust of Petit here which I thought I should bring up in my lookup, because this is something which we normally don't look at. So when we pass by, anyway, these views are not available anymore because of the patras for the metro. So these are rare pictures now. So with that, and with about 6 minutes to go, I conclude. So I concluded on time, which is an achievement, considering that you were all able to keep pace with me. And I had to go a little fast once, but yes, I prefer to finish on time. We have Commodore Johnson waiting to give us his insightful lecture in about 5 minutes from now. So can I just stop share? We have 5 minutes, we can conclude.